Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the City of East Providence City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, January 21st, 2022. There will be no executive session, so we'll be jumping right into the meetings. May we all rise for a pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, may we start off with a roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
I'm here.
Councilman Morato.
Here.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Here.
Councilwoman Souza.
Here.
Council President Brito.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mind getting the,
I'll go grab that.
if you're following the docket, there's no need for us to reconvene to open session because there was no executive session. It's not necessary to make a motion to seal executive session meeting minutes as well, because there was no executive session. Item number 4, the consent calendar.
Consent calendar for discussion and possible vote. Council journals, executive session minutes from June 7th, 2022, and the regular meeting minutes from June 7th of 2022. We also have notice of new property numbers, 123 Progress Ave, 120 Bayview Avenue, and 124 Bayview Avenue. And then we have previously approved permits and licenses as a read-in, a one-day entertainment for Jennifer Tierney at 73 Bright Ridge Avenue. The event was on June 18th to the 19th from 1 p.m. to 12 a.m. and it was stereo speakers.
Okay,
Motion to approve.
we have a motion on the floor. Would anyone like to second that? Motion?
Second.
Okay. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next item, licenses for discussion and possible vote. If you please, we can do the motion to bundle and the motion to approve. There are 7 licenses.
Anyone have any objections to bundling the licenses, not for non-public hearing?
None. No. So, Mr. Chairman, I move to bundle licenses C1 through C7.
So we have a motion on the floor. If there's no objection to bundling. Second to motion, bundle C1 through C7, second it. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye.
Next item is motion to approve licenses C1 through C7.
I move to approve licenses as read.
And before I second, Madam Clerk, no issues with any of these. Everybody's good to go.
Everyone's good.
Okay, then I shall second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next
Five.
item. Scroll through, sorry about that. The next item we have would be public comment. You have,
No, we're skipping through proclamation and presentation. There's no communication. So public comment, for public comment, we have one person who signed up for public comment, Dr. Judy Glass, it looks like. I hope I have that right.
That's okay. I'm gonna field that to later.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good.
Appointments, none.
Anyone else wishing for public comment who did not sign? This will be the opportunity. If not, okay, public comment is now closed.
Appointments, none. Next item is council members. The first is support of House Bill H 6614. Makes it a felony for an individual to possess any semi-automatic firearm magazine, which is capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Violation is punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment or fine of up to 5,000. Councilman Cahoon for a discussion.
So when I was writing this was a matter that was very much up in the air. Actually, as of the time that I submitted this resolution for council vote, it was
passing in the Senate. So the House had passed it, the Senate passed it. Basically, it's fait accompli at this point. However, making it part of one of my communications, I would like to read it. A couple of my constituents have reached out to me to find out my position specifically on this item, and I did take some time doing a little bit of research. So, Mr. President, your approval, I'll go ahead and read the resolution.
Please do so.
This resolution was written in support of House Bill 6614, whereas the Rhode Island House of Representatives recently approved by a vote of 43 to 26, House Bill 6614, which would make it a felony for an individual to possess any semi-automatic firearm magazine which is capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition. And whereas a 2017 study published in the American Journal of Public Health on the effect of large capacity magazine bans on high fatality mass shootings revealed the following. 1, the incidence of high fatality mass shootings in states without large capacity magazine or LCM bans was more than double the rate of that in states with LCM bans. 2, attacks involving LCMs resulted in a 62% higher mean average death toll. And 3, LCM bans appear to reduce both the incidence of and number of people killed in high fatality mass shootings. And whereas 10 states, this was as of last week, 10 states, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, and Washington restrict LCMs in some way. And per 2020 Centers for Disease Control data on firearm mortality by state, 7 of these states ranked among the 10th lowest in this category. And whereas LCMs have been employed in multiple horrific and high-profile mass shooting murders in recent history, including Aurora, Colorado in July of 2012, where 12 people were killed and 58 were injured, Sandy Hook Elementary School in December of 2012, where 20 6- and 7-year-old children and 6 faculty members were killed, the Pulse nightclub shooting in June of 2016, where 49 were killed and 53 more were injured, the Las Vegas shooting of October of 2017, where 58 were killed and more than 400 others were injured, the Sutherland Springs First Baptist Church shooting in November of 2017, where 26, including an unborn baby, were killed and 22 more were injured, the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting of February 2018, where 17 were killed and 17 more were injured, and Robb Elementary in May of 22, where 19 students and 2 faculty were killed. Resolution goes on. Now therefore be it resolved, the City Council of City of East Providence hereby supports, not asking the City Council to take a vote on this again because it's done. I just want to point out one more thing, if I may. In the course of researching on this particular item, I note that the Pulse nightclub shooting, which I'm sure that we all remember in June of 2016, was to that point in American history, the site where the most people were killed in a mass shooting in American history. It held that record for all of a year until Las Vegas a year later. So my constituents, a couple of my constituents asked me to where I stood. That's where I stood on that particular item, and I'm glad it passed. I'm done. Yep.
Thank you, Councilman. Next item, please.
Next item, possible referendum question. 2022 November election. Shall new cannabis related licenses for business involved in the cultivation, manufacture, laboratory testing, and for the retail sale of adult recreational use cannabis be issued in the city and or town? Councilwoman Souza for discussion.
I'm going to defer this to the next council meeting, if you wouldn't mind, Madam Clerk, putting that on.
Of
A
course.
couple of people who wanted to speak on it are not available today.
Okay, sure. No problem.
Thank you.
That next meeting will be July 15th.
And just for the record, our next meeting, as the deputy clerk had indicated, back where on our summer schedule will be July 19th. So we'll be going July and August for the month of the summer months, and then we'll be reconvening for our regular scheduled meetings in September of 2022. Deputy clerk.
Next item, seeking crosswalk for safe pedestrian and cyclist connection from First Street across Veterans Parkway to access the East Bay Bike Path. Councilwoman Souza for discussion.
Thank you. So this, we know that the bike path and access to the bike path in the community has been an ongoing conversation. It's an ongoing safety concern. Now that we've entered into today officially, happy summer to everybody. The summer months, we have an uptick in people using that area. And the access for residents in our community from their neighborhoods to the bike path is not something that's very conducive or welcoming or safe for that matter. And having spoken with residents in that abutting neighborhood who like to frequently use the bike path, getting across that is concerning. They do it, but with children, there is some anxiety that comes with that. So going along that route, there really isn't anything that crosses over that I can identify as somewhere where someone can say, okay, this is a point where I can get from A to B. First Street is obviously towards the bottom of the bike path, and then going up, I'd say midpoint would be around Fifth Street, Lyons Avenue, and then further up, Kettle Point, I identify as probably another location that would be comparable for, again, neighborhoods to be able to get an access point and to go across. What my ask is, and discussion open to the council, is what kind of a plan or can we put together to create an access and not just a crosswalk, putting some stripes down, but actually some traffic signs, some traffic lights. And I'm not talking about like a stop and go light, but flashing lights indicating that they're to slow down, that there's crosswalk up ahead. Something along the lines of they could press a button, or maybe there's a motion sensor as somebody approaches and the lights flash for drivers to indicate that there's somebody in a crosswalk up ahead for them to yield, so that people can get access to that bike path and be there safely, versus just packing all their bikes up, scooters, razor, whatever, into their car, parking in the parking lot, and then getting onto the bike path. So that this conversation is, geared towards the administration, the planning department, our Public Works Department, for us to collaborate on something to make this possible for the residents in our community to have a safe access to that pathway. So that's my discussion about it.
Any comments, suggestions, recommendations?
Sounds like a
Yeah.
good idea.
Yeah, good idea along those lines, because as we all know, state kind of operates a bike path. It's a little off the topic, but getting a lot of complaints about trash strewn along the way. So if there are any conversations with the state departments that control the bike path, that, they could, I know everyone has problems with trash everywhere in the summer. It's just hard to keep up. They don't have the staff to empty these barrels, but it kind of goes along with the whole plan. It's a good idea, Councilwoman.
So I guess my official ask is, Deputy, if we could, Mr. Gonzalez, if we could have a meeting or a gathering of the minds of sorts to work through this and see what our possibilities are, what authority we have and how much of it we have crossing over to access that bike path, that would be
Yes,
well
certainly. We can
appreciated.
engage the state in conversations and talk to, Director Borges,
Mhm.
see if we can come up with some solutions, and also with concerning the trash as well.
Okay, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
I know it's just a little bit off topic, but can you also look into the crosswalk at Willow Pond? It was approved by the state, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Crosswalk
Some
on
reason.
Willow Pond.
At Willow Pond, correct.
Certainly will.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Souza, do you have an appetite for putting that on, say, the next meeting too, so we can follow up? Or
Absolutely. Yeah, we can continue that conversation. Thank you.
Okay, next item, please. That's all right. There's no public hearing. New business, mayor communications.
First would be an appointment not requiring council confirmation. Eric Underhill to the East Providence Historic Commission. The term is June 2nd, 2022 through June 1st of 2025. Director Gonzalez.
Mr. Underhill is a musician, music director. He also works at People's Baptist Church
He wants to help the Historic District Commission to fulfill its mission of stewardship for the city's heritage. And the next thing is the finance report, which Director Malcolm Moore is not in attendance. He had a family commitment.
That concludes your.
A couple more. East
more.
Providence
Oh.
Economic Development Commission has approved 2 new loans to support local small business development projects at its April and May meetings. First, a loan in the amount of $99,999 for the purpose of implementing building improvements for Union Bar, a bar located at 332 Bullets Point Avenue and owned by Rory Miller, a Riverside resident. Second, a $50,000 loan for the purpose of removing an old bridge in the East Providence Yacht Club, a locally owned waterfront bar and grill owned by East Providence resident Mikhail Perry. And then some information on the community development block grant awards update. Your packets are 2022 community development block grants awards. A total of 12 grants were awarded to the public service organizations totaling $96,200. A total of 5 grants were awarded to housing programs organizations totaling $465,000. A total of 2 grants were awarded for economic development, including Section 108, micro enterprises and small business loans, including $363,850. Director Dave Backrack will be available for questions. If you guys could forward them to me, we'll be more than happy to give.
Great. Just one question, Mr. President. Is that a done deal? Those were awarded or is working on them?
It's an awards update. Yes, they're awarded.
They already awarded. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Gonzo,
Yes.
could I ask you a favor? Just, I know it says it's attached in here, but so is like everything else. So it would be possible for you to just email me that list quick whenever you have a chance.
Sure. Sure, no problem.
Just for reference. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that concludes mayor communications. We're on to reports of other city officials.
Report of other city officials is the report of the city solicitor, Narragansett Electric Company, DBA National Grid, E-183, 115 KV Transmission Line Relocation Project, RI Supreme Court Number 2018-40-MP. Discussion update.
So this is just a basic update to the rest of the council. This is litigation that predates me and was going on long before I got here. But this is the cross power line over the Providence River, and then it comes in Providence. There was an appeal filed by residents on the Providence side and some other interested groups about the decision of the Energy Siting Facilities Board, which approved what they called a bridge alignment south for the electric power lines. There was an effort to try to get those lines buried, but it was determined to be unfeasible at a long time ago, basically. So long story short is some objectors appealed that decision to the Supreme Court. They finally issued a decision. There was an oral argument earlier this year, and they basically upheld the position of the city of East Providence and Narragansett Electric. And so they've approved of the alignment, which is called the Bridge South alignment. So I expect that work will begin. That's all I really have. I put the case in your packet. It's pretty boring, but it's pretty technical too.
So the appeal is not
Over.
It's over.
Yeah.
So those lines will not be buried.
They will not be buried. That was
That's
determined
going back
along.
over 20 years.
Yeah, and that was determined.
Yeah.
That decision was made a while ago that they couldn't feasibly bury the lines, but that was part of the whole appeal process.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir.
And I want to thank Attorney Mark Russo, who actually handled this for the city.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Next item.
Next item, resolutions for discussion and possible vote. The first resolution is the resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract amendment with FR Engineering Group, Inc. for construction oversight services related to the repair of the seawall located at Rose Larissa Park. And the sponsor is Council Vice President Roberts.
Mr. President and members, this is just the final piece, the final leg of the project to repair the seawall at Larissa Park at Crescent Park. I think by now we all know the history of that. I checked with Director Borges and engineers Skadberg just to get more information, anticipating questions for this piece of it. And in order to not delay the project, so our last meeting, we voted to award the construction contract, and work has already started. They've been on site. They're marking the location. The piece that is before us tonight is the final piece that gives the city the financial and the construction oversight that is usually required. I won't read the whole thing, but this company will include full-time resident engineering services. By resident engineering, it means they will be there all the time, and they will report and observe the contractor and observe that the contractor is constructing the seawall to what we have specified in our bid. As the engineers indicated, this is complicated work, cannot be done and should not be done by city staff members sitting there watching them. And these are on-site seawall professionals, and the cost is in line with the industry, excuse me, I get my glasses back on, industry standard pricing. So without this amendment, we have no oversight on the project. And it's separate from the construction of it. And I won't read the history of it. The amount associated with this amendment is $161,820. This would come from the ARPA account, as it's not eligible for other funding sources. And as I see it, it's the kind of thing where projects have been done in the past, and 10 years from now, it falls apart or it starts to erode, and people say, was it substandard concrete, or what happened to that road or the bridge? Well, we're providing guaranteed professional engineering service on site every minute that the contractor is working on it to ensure that the specs are met. And that's the purpose of this amendment. Anyone needs the whole thing read, I can do that.
No, I don't think it's necessary. However, I do have one question, Councilman. The engineering group that put the drawings together, so where do they stand with respect to managing the project?
Where do they stand?
Yeah,
There's
they're a company. I mean, we hired an engineer.
This amendment now.
No, initially, an engineer had to come up with the drawings and the findings. Is that something entirely different?
That's different. That original engineer was to design the project.
Okay.
And that was the phase one, really, design. And then we awarded the contract to do the work. And now this engineering group will ensure that it's meets specs.
Okay. And do they report to the city, or do they report to the engineer who did the design specs?
I'm not sure.
The city, I think.
I guess the city.
It's the city, we hired the city, so they're our representative on site.
Yeah, very much like we have with the school project, right? We have an owner's project manager whose job is to watch both the architect and the general construction. In fact, that's a requirement per state law for spending school funds. Kind of surprised that there isn't a similar state statute or requirement for doing a project like this that touches as many things as it does. So it's certainly good practice.
And it might be, as Director Board just stated, for the last meeting, they were still in negotiations with this company, making sure that engineer Skadberg, who was our engineer, had everything that the city wanted. And so that just wasn't ready for the last meeting. So had we waited, we'd be sitting here tonight without having started at all on the project. So at least now, I don't think you'll see excavation yet, but you're going to see markings, and they're planning the project. Now we'll award this tonight if we do, and the oversight will take place.
Was there a engineering company that oversaw the first phase? Was that city workers?
The emergency repairs, what are you talking about? I don't recall that we hired we might have had a consultant. I wasn't on the day-to-day operation of it. I don't know that I don't recall hiring a company like this It was probably, there was a consultant in the design plan, probably the same company. I'll ask Director Borges, but he seems confident in that this is the third of the final leg of the project.
And why does this so-called, let's call it phase two, require, or there's a need for an engineering group to oversee it? Why do we need one now compared to the work that's been done up to this point?
Because as I understand it, the level of the work is right now that will start is very complicated. And it's not appropriate for a city staffer to provide that oversight. We need a professional. These are trained engineers on a project exactly like this. And they're responsible. So if we come back in a few years and say, look, there's a problem, part of the contract is they're responsible for it. I think to just take someone from the City Hall office and say, you're gonna sit there every day and make sure the specs are followed, wouldn't give us the level of protection that this step does.
Yeah, and not to draw parallels or compare apples to oranges, but so for example, what our owner's project manager does on the school project, which is not similar in scope. This is a smaller scope project, but we're looking at 30 weeks, 40 weeks. So something like that. I think it says actually in here, it's 29 weeks. Right. So that's a big scope. There will certainly be requests for change order as, they find site conditions or something else that we don't know about now. There certainly are going to be, invoice issues or questions. These are things that an oversight entity can dig down deeper into than people who aren't specifically trained can do.
Any further questions for the councilman? If not, Councilman, you want to phase that into a motion?
Yes, Council President. I move approval of the resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract amendment with FR Engineering Group, Inc. for construction oversight services related to the repair of the seawall located at Rose Larissa Park in the amount of $161,820. And the funding source is the ARPA account.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Would anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next resolution, please.
Next item, resolution requesting Juneteenth be recognized as an official holiday in the state of Rhode Island. The sponsor is Councilwoman Souza.
Thank you. So as we know, Sunday, which was observed on Monday across the nation, was a federal holiday celebrating the freedom of slavery in our country. And so thinking through a lot of that, I put together this resolution for the council and again, for the state to consider recognizing it as an official holiday here in the state of Rhode Island. So I'm just going to read through it for the informational purpose. So whereas Juneteenth, also known as Juneteenth Independence Day or Freedom Day, an American holiday that commences the June 19, 1865 announcement of the abolition of slavery in Texas, and more generally, the emancipation of enslaved African Americans throughout the former Confederate States of America. The holiday marks the day when federal troops in 1865 arrived in Galveston, Texas, to take control of the state and ensure that all enslaved people be freed. And whereas after the Civil War came to a close in the spring of 1865, U.S. General Gordon Gragner arrived in Galveston in June, signaled freedom for Texas. 250,000 enslaved people, a 2 full and a half years after signing the Emancipation Proclamation, Although emancipation didn't happen overnight for everybody, in some cases in slavery withheld the information until after harvest season, celebration broke out amongst newly freed Black people, and the Juneteenth was born. In December 1865, slavery in the United States was formally abolished, and the adoption of the 13th Amendment. And whereas Juneteenth honors the end of slavery in the United States and is considered the longest running African-American holiday. And in 1979, Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday. And in 2021, President Biden signed into law Senate Bill 475, Senate 475, making Juneteenth a federal holiday. Texas was the only state to have that day as a paid holiday for state employees as of 2020. Since then, at least 8 additional states, New York, Maine, Louisiana, Virginia, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Washington and Illinois have followed. Therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of East Providence requests the city clerk or deputy clerk to send a copy of the resolution to the governor of the state of Rhode Island, the lieutenant governor of the state of Rhode Island, the president of the state of Rhode Island Senate, and the speaker of Rhode Island House of Representatives, and the senators and representatives of the city of East Providence. Because our state is a state of grave diversity and culture, I feel it's important that we continue working towards a path of inclusiveness and equality. And this would just be another step, I believe, in the state and in communities to take that and move it forward, for everybody to feel as though we recognize, we hear, and we want to make progress and continue that. And I know there've been wonderful celebrations throughout the weekend. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend any because of my work schedule, but I did get to see pictures and the parades and, everything that was involved. And I think it's an amazing job that we're doing as a state to try to move forward. And this would just, in my opinion, be an additional step to do so. So if there are no further questions or comments or discussion, I move to pass as read and open the floor to any comments.
We have a motion on the floor at this point in time.
Second.
We have a second. Deputy Clerk. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye,
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you.
thank you.
Next item, introduction of ordinances for discussion and possible vote. Amended and restated ordinance, chapter number 832, book 23, pages 364 through 370, adopted March 15th of 2022, adopting an amended East Providence Waterfront Special Development District Tax Increment Financing Plan, the amended project plan, and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance certain political infrastructure and public improvements necessary in connection with the East Point site project. Sponsor is Council President Brito and Councilman Cahoon.
Mr. Fazioli, you have a small presentation you want to put on this evening for us?
And I think just for context, so we approved the TIF that we're talking about amending tonight. Oh gosh, when was that? April, March,
March
sometime
15th.
around then? Yeah, so what we're being asked to consider tonight are amended terms on that TIF in exchange for some additional things to be worked into the development. It's all in our packet, but we'll let Mr. Fazioli explain it. I think he can do a better job than either of us.
Yeah, I'll be brief. It's the first passage, so, we're prepared to make a fuller presentation in July, but you're all familiar with the project. We had extensive discussions in February and March on this. Tonight, just want to provide a little update on some technical amendments and also maybe to share some additional information about the project. We have some people here who will be working on the site as long as the developer. But essentially what this amendment does is a series of things. One is because of some changes in the financing plan, there's no change in the amount being borrowed. That stays the same. The amendment is asking that the amount of taxes that's allocated towards the infrastructure cost of the project it be increased from 70 to 75%. So again, the fact that the affordable housing development that will be coming in will be producing less revenue than originally projected. We need to increase the share that the overall project has to generate to pay for the public infrastructure. Again, these are projections. The reality is that the revenues could come in far better than the projections. As in the case of Kettle Point, they far exceed the projections where the city is realizing more money than the original projections, what took place several years ago.
Mr. Fazio, if you don't mind, if you want to just tell the public what the name of this project, with the
It's
location of this
East
project.
Point project located on Bourne Avenue, formerly the site of the Ocean State Steel G&O site is referred to.
Just so the public understands.
So basically, again, it's to increase that share from 70% to 75% that will support the bond payments. All of the money, again, is going towards the local government, either to pay for infrastructure or to the general fund. No funds are being diverted to the private developer. No taxes are being deferred or abated. 100% of the taxes are being collected. It's how we're using to channel them to pay for different costs to support the project. So in this case, the original amendment, the original ordinance had 70% of the revenue. We're going to be asking for 75% just to make the financing a little bit stronger. So as we originally discussed, there were 39 affordable housing units included in the original project plan. Now we have identified who the provider of the affordable housing project is, and they're here tonight to talk a little bit about their project. But there's one last thing that this amendment does. It includes a special assessment safeguard that's included that provides the ability for the city to levy a special assessment on the properties within the district if revenues fall short to make the bond payments. Properties within this district will be subject to a special assessment to make up the shortfall. Like if you belong to a social club or a golf club, and at the end of the year, there's a shortfall, members, receive a special assessment. So this way it protects the city, other taxes, other taxpayers or other taxing bodies in the city won't be implicated to make up that shortfall. This is included in this amendment as well. So it creates that special assessment.
That special assessment, does it need General Assembly?
No, it can be approved just here by the ordinance by the city council. So it's under the general TIF laws that the state set out under the enabling legislation. So having this safeguard in place just makes it protects the city from if there's any shortfall in the project. So, but that's sort of the summary of the technical amendments. We have the developer here as well, and also people from the folks who will be doing the affordable housing piece. If you'd like to hear from them to maybe talk a little about their project, and I think you're familiar with them. I think it would be good for the council to hear what they're planning. So,
Mr. Fazio, can I just ask one question? Just piggybacking off what you just said. So essentially, it would be that special assessment would go towards, like if there was it just slipped my tongue with an association. If the facility or the land has an association, it would go towards the members of an association, or is it more of an individual?
no, it goes on the
Property owner.
individual property owners. Yeah, so it'll be the people who own the property will be added onto their tax bill.
Would that be like the whole property
Yeah.
or sections? How would they determine? How
all
would
of
we
the
determine?
property, everything within
So
the
everybody who lives
yeah,
within
with
that.
everybody
whole-
within-
okay.
So it'll be the the homeowners, the apartment, people living, folks who own the property will be subject to that
Okay.
tax. Everybody.
And not the general public as.
No, not the
as it's
general
set up
public.
in Kettle
Exactly. Yeah, that's why we have it in there.
Exactly.
It's almost like a fence around it. So
Okay.
everything that stays-
Businesses.
businesses, yeah, this is all residential for the most part, but if there was a business, they would be
Okay.
subject to that tax.
I have a question on the third page of the resolution, number 4. If I can get clarification as to exactly what that means.
Yeah, can you read it? I don't have it actually in
The
front.
redevelopment plan and amended project plan do not presently provide for acquisition by the city of property by negotiation or by eminent domain.
I defer to the.
I'm sorry, what number is that?
So number 4,
Number
page, the third page of the proposed ordinance. Line item number 4, numbered number 4, towards the bottom.
Actually, we have somebody here. if you didn't-
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Josh Berlinski. I'm an attorney with the firm of Darrow Everett. I represent the developer Noble Development. Councilman Morado, in response to your question, the redevelopment plan requires certain findings of fact in order to qualify for the TIF. So items 1 through 6, I believe, 1 through 10 are the elements of the statute that say must be satisfied in order to become eligible for a TIF. So there's nothing particularly notable or unique about that. It's just you have to check all of these boxes pursuant to the statute in order to be eligible. So There is no eminent domain proceeding contemplated. The property is currently owned by the city, administered by a special master under contract, but we simply have to recite all of these elements in order to qualify or satisfy the statutory criteria. So there's no special meaning behind any of those provisions.
Is this like a boilerplate?
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. I believe all of these points. So if you, excuse me, if you were to look at prior TIF resolutions, they would have the exact same verbiage. It's just simply something that has to be done in order to adhere to the process.
But we had to meet those same 10 criteria when we initially approved the TIF back in March.
That's correct. So this is just an amended resolution. So this is very exactly the same as to what you did a few months prior. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Betty?
Good evening, President Brito and City Council members. My name is Betty Galligan, and I'm here representing Aldersbridge Communities in the capacity of the CEO who could not be here tonight, Richard Gamache. Aldersbridge Communities, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about it and then talk about the project and some details. It's a not-for-profit organization that's been caring for older adults in the city of East Providence for over 50 years. It was previously founded and known as United Methodist Elder Care. You may know of it as that. The East Providence locations that they operate are Winslow Gardens, which is an assisted living and independent living on Irving Avenue, and Lynn Health and Rehabilitation on Alexander Avenue, which is a long-term care skilled nursing facility. In Providence, we also operate Arbor Hill Assisted Living, and in Woonsocket, we have 2 floors of assisted living at the Woonsocket Housing Authority's St. Germain building. Aldersbridge is the largest provider of affordable housing in the state of Rhode Island. We are not an out-of-state for-profit organization that's looking to come in and make fast profit. Our Board of Trustees is made up of many local leaders, including past City Councilwoman and City Clerk Valerie Perry. And our CEO, Rick Gamache, lives in East Providence, right in Riverside. We also have the former Lieutenant Governor of the state of Rhode Island, Elizabeth Roberts, on the board, so the leadership is very strong. With us tonight to give us support is our Board of Trustees President, Jason Pressifs, and also our trustee, Jody Glass. And the entire organization and staff are very dedicated to the East Providence city residents and the community. When it comes to elderly housing, Aldersbridge takes a little bit of a different approach because they really believe in treating older adults with respect. The CEO often is heard speaking about the fact that when you're an older person and it's time for you to go into a nursing home, why do you have to go into a nursing home where you're sharing a room with a roommate that you don't even know, like you're back in college, like in a college dorm, you have to share a room and a bathroom. So recently, Lynn Health underwent renovations to renovate and create 11 private rooms for older adults because they really feel that it's unfair to have to be in that kind of a situation. So when it comes to older adults that are in the LGBTQ community, research shows that those who have to enter into senior housing feel that they have to hide their true identity because they are afraid of like fearing bias and discrimination, or even worse in some cases. So they have to hide their identity from the mainstream population that's non-LGBTQ. And there are many LGBTQ adults in our state and East Providence who may not also have someone to care for them as they age, you know, because their family unit is a little different sometimes from that of non-LGBTQ persons. So East Point is really a great opportunity for East Providence to innovate, to fill a community need. Other states like Massachusetts have created senior living that's marketed exclusively to LGBTQ community and their allies, but this would be a first for Rhode Island. And East Providence would really take the lead. The next closest project, like I had mentioned, is in Boston. In fact, it just had a celebration opening of today. It's called Pride, P-R-Y-D-E. Many other cities in Rhode Island may follow suit, and this can be a model of affordable housing for this particular population. Now, this one that we're making is not exclusive to LGBTQ adults, older adults. It's inclusive because non-LGBTQ people can also live there. The apartment building that we're looking at in East Point would be an independent living residence, just like what's at Winslow Gardens. But the difference is that Winslow Gardens is in a 51-year-old building, And this would be like brand new. It's really beautiful. I don't know if you've seen any of the architectural renderings, but it's going to be very modern and very attractive. One Neighborhood Builders is Alders Bridge's experienced business partner. One Neighborhood Builders builds over all across Rhode Island, but mostly like Greater Providence, northern area. They also have built right in East Providence, the residences at Riverside Square, and also Sutton Place Apartments, which is being renovated. Affordable housing is all that One Neighborhood Builders does. Alders Bridge Communities already has received a grant for a low income tax credit from LISC, which is the Local Initiatives Support Corporation, for pre-development work to pay basically for the architect's design and the engineering work before any shovels even get into the ground. Alders Bridge has not yet been approved for funding by Rhode Island Housing, but they do expect to apply in September when the funding cycle opens. And this would be to pay for all of the construction. Alders Bridge is the only long-term care continuum in the state of Rhode Island that's approved by Blue Cross as a safe zone, but we renamed it a welcome zone because we like that term better. And an Alders Pride Committee was formed by Jason and Jody, Alders Pride, several years ago so that we could provide education for staff members and residents at all 4 of Alders Bridge's locations to address issues or concerns related to members of the LGBTQ community. And this Saturday, Alders Bridge Communities will be participating in the parade that's happening at Pierce Field, going all the way to City Hall on Saturday. So we have a lot of towny pride, and this being Pride Month, we feel that Alders Bridge's East Point project is something that we can all be proud of. And we welcome the support of the council and the residents of Phillipsdale and Rumford and the entire city of East Providence. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Betty.
Mr. President, I have a couple of questions. And Bill, these are going to kind of be softballs for you, but this is a complicated thing for people to understand. So just kind of want to walk through kind of some standard questions on how TIFs work, right? So essentially, when there's a development that is going to be constructed, funded at least in part by a TIF, you will see that developer get financing from private financing. You will see that developer sometimes have their own capital that they're committing, and then a portion of that will be financed by TIF bonds.
That's correct. Yep.
And ultimately, the TIF bonds come from, the TIF bond money comes from where?
It comes from a bond, so there'll be a bond, there'll be issued that'll provide the proceeds to make the public infrastructure improvements. It gets paid back by the revenue solely derived by the subsequent private development there. So right now, the property generates zero in taxes for the city because it's owned by the city. But as new units are added, market rate units, market rate townhomes, single family homes, apartment buildings, all of a sudden the assessed value of the property grows pretty significantly. So you're going from a base of zero to now collecting, say, $1 million a year or $2 million a year. And those are the monies that'll be used to pay back the bond issue that pays for the public infrastructure costs.
So when you talk about there being no cost to the city, right now, the tax assessment is
Literally zero.
basal level, right?
Right, yeah.
In this case, zero.
Yeah.
Right. And when the development takes place, obviously the assessment is going to go up. And what the TIF does is it basically allows the developer to kind of wait to pay the assessed value or pay a portion of the assessed value in accordance with the terms of the contract over a certain period of time.
Right, yeah, so we sort of schedule the payment so that it goes along with the annual increase in the revenue, so that you can kind of tailor the payments in the bond to, reflect the increase in the tax payments, so that there's, some stability at the beginning, and as over time, you'll get to a point where the actual annual revenues will exceed the actual bond payments, and that's when the city starts realizing the bulk of the revenues from the project. So,
and what the council and the general public should not see is they should not see, hey, here's bond revenue going into the general fund, or bond expenditures coming out of the general fund. This is something
it's all restricted and separate. This
apart.
isn't the case of Kettle Point. It's all in a separate fund. It's all accounted for separately. We have it monitored by other folks. We get an annual report that I provide to the council how the TIF fund is operating. I think last year we were able to indicate the Kettle Point one was generating over $500,000 above and beyond the revenue that the city receives. So again, as long as you construct it with conservative projections and assumptions, it should perform pretty well. So.
And where we had started with the approval of this particular TIF was essentially a 70-30 share between the city and the developer, meaning that the city will realize 30% of the taxable assessment over the course of that time, right? Whereas in this case, we're saying, well, we're going to change those terms up a little bit to be 75-25 because we see a particular need for this type of affordable housing, and that's a value to us.
Right, exactly. Since they're not for profit, they're not paying the full share of taxes, say that a market rate project would. So to make up that difference, we have to increase that ratio, and actually the market rate units will be subsidizing the not-for-profit units. And just to, I know, just to be clear, none of the money goes to the actual developer. The money all stays with the city. And it pays for public assets and public infrastructure. So nothing goes to finance private costs or private development of the project. 100% of the revenue is all used for public goods, either for the infrastructure, which we own, it will be public assets, or it goes into the general fund.
Right. So this is a TIF is really a scalpel for a particular need, right? I mean, you have to have, as the gentleman pointed out, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't internalize your name, but you have to meet certain criteria. Josh? Yes. Sorry about that, Josh. You have to meet certain criteria in order to qualify for a TIF. You have to have, a blighted land area. You have to, right. And this met all of those criteria. We agreed to a 70-30. Can you talk a little bit about, and now we're being asked to make that 70-25. Can you talk a little bit about the number of units that will be made available for affordable housing under this plan?
Yeah, I believe it's 39 is the number we're going with. Yeah, so 39 units, which is 10% of the overall project. So it's at the 10% threshold. That's we and there might be a possibility to add more down the road, but right now it's 10%. So
yeah, I mean this is, if housing is not the number one need in East Providence, it's 1A, right? I would put revitalization of commercial space, from kind of a macroeconomic perspective as 1 and 1A, housing being the other. People cannot find places to live. And that trickles, kind of across the spectrum, right? So you wind up with people who are maybe occupying properties or residences which would otherwise be affordable, which are no longer affordable because the demand is so high. And really, the only way to wash that out is to increase your housing supply. And doing that in such a way where we are targeting, yes, we are increasing our housing. Not all of these residences will be affordable, but specifically reserving affordable units right now is really the most responsible way to do this, in my perspective.
yeah, it's one way, but it also adds to the housing supplies of the community. So
Right.
I know a lot of people 65 and older who stay in their single family home that's got 3-4 bedrooms because they have no alternative to go to. By adding these affordable units that are targeted for an elderly population, that might, provide an incentive for somebody who's like, well, I've been living in this house for 50, 60 years, but I'd rather be in a more a suitable place for somebody who's, a little older. They might be more willing to sell their house knowing they've got a nice alternative to go to. I think a lot of folks stay in their homes because they're very hesitant to move into some place that they don't feel comfortable in. This is a very unique need. And I think we're probably going to see more of this. I think as the state continues to age, you're going to see more affordable housing units targeted for people 55 and older, 65 and older. And that should help the overall housing market because it'll take those units that right now off the market that might be added to the mix.
Councilman, can I interject?
I have no other questions. Thank you.
I want, Mr. President, want to ask, actually, a point and a question. A point for clarification for people who aren't sure about this area. This is the long-standing Genova plan, maybe a decade or more that it never.
Yeah. So the site was the last use of the site was a steel mill, Ocean State Steel. 1994, it was shut down by DM because of serious environmental issues, and the buildings became decayed, and they were getting, they eventually were knocked down. I think it was in 2005, 2006. Genova, a company out in New York, acquired the site and did remediate it. So the site's clean environmentally for the most part. And they proposed a plan that was approved, but they got caught up in the housing downturn in 2008, 2009. So, but it's taken, like you said, a couple of proposals that never got off the drawing board, but this last proposal, because it's under the judicial receivership, it has a lot of momentum. They only have 1 or 2 permits left at the state level to move ahead. They're all done with the local permits. So they really expect to close on the property, which the city will realize money when they sell the property to the developer, get a return on our money from there, and also have the property start construction. I think, Richard, you were mentioning sometime in the fall. Yeah,
That's who I wanted to ask, someone who wants to speak for the company. With the, and it's been my concern with a lot of the developments going on everywhere, statewide, but mostly here. With the current economic craziness and inflation and everything going on, interest rates just went up from the Fed. How do you feel about the project? Are you able to move forward relatively on a schedule, or?
Yeah, so we're excited to get started. Richard Bakari with Noble Development. We were also developers of Kettle Point, and we've had some great success there. To be honest, the level of interest at Kettle Point, we still have about 6 units left to sell, even though interest rates have gone up, has not stopped. So we see all levels of housing still in really strong demand. So we expect that, between some apartments that we already have kind of slated to go up vertically at East Point, and starting like the first 20 townhouses right off the bat, as well as Aldersbridge. It should be, we'll start the site work right away once we acquire the property, probably in August. Probably the biggest issue is just getting workers and getting companies to get there and start the work, because everybody's so busy. But no, we don't expect that this is going to give us any delay. We see the demand is very strong and will be, because there's just not enough supply.
I'm sure with getting workers is a problem everywhere, but you don't foresee a situation like our Newport Avenue where that project, we haven't seen a shovel in the ground to speak of, the Capianato project, or?
No, I don't. This is strictly residential, so the demand is so strong for that, and the supply is so weak in the state of Rhode Island, that I think, to have 400 units on the waterfront there, with a diverse type of unit mix, it'll be well received by the city and, frankly, surrounding communities, because there's just not enough product in the market.
My last question, either for yourself or Bill, if you can chime in, and it's probably not an easy answer, and I don't know that we have one, but I get asked all the time from residents, what qualifies affordable housing? What does that mean? Is it Section 8? Is it something else? Is there a number? How do people know? I know it's a formula and it's kind of complicated.
It's restricted based on the income of the applicant that's looking to live in that particular unit. In this case, I believe it'll be also restricted by age. So this would be age restricted and affordable restricted. So the applicant would have to come forth, make an application to live in Aldersbridge, and they have, depending on the type of financing that they get from the state, they would either qualify for, 80% of the area median income. And the formula that goes into that, I think it's 30% of their income that they could use towards paying their rent.
So it's different for everybody.
It's different for every type of affordable housing development based on the financing that they get and the grants that they get. In their case, I believe, and you guys can answer better, but I believe it's 80% AMI is what you're looking for. So the applicant would have to be qualified 30% of their income, no more than 30% of their income could go towards the rent for 80% of the area median income. And there's a formula that goes into that. Essentially, I don't want to, it's roughly about $1,400 a month for a one or a 2-bed. For a 1-bedroom.
That's a good thing to know. I mean, it won't hold you to that, but that's the kind of question people ask. Well, how much?
What does that mean?
What does it mean? The percent. A millionaire like our attorney can't just walk in there, right?
Right.
So okay.
Yeah, and it's not free either. You still have to you have the ability to pay for it yourself. There's certainly, they can qualify for subsidies to help them, but this is not free housing for anybody. This is
Sure.
geared towards elderly people or over 55, whatever the age restriction. Careful, be careful, sorry. 62 and above. We won't call them anything other than over 62 and a certain income verification.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And generally, just to speak back to the TIF and the difference, when, we originally agreed that we would put a 10% component, I think Councilman Cahoon asked that last time we were here, that I would commit to 10%. And I said yes at the time. And since then, we've been in detailed discussions with Alderbridge and other affordable housing groups. The issue comes down to when we underwrote the TIF in the beginning, we didn't limit what the tax revenue would be from that 10%. In order for them to qualify for Rhode Island housing approval, they will only pay 8% of their taxes of their income from the rents to taxes. So when you do that math, that's why the increase is gone up. It's not that we're trying to make it a better deal for us, but really for any affordable housing developer to proceed, they're going to ask for the same issue. So that's how it shakes out in the math.
So that 8% is versus a straight assessed value, right?
Right, which is what
which would be
so
presumably
it comes down to
certainly high.
roughly, and I don't have it in front of me, but let's say that the market rate taxes per unit would be roughly 2,500 to 3,000 per unit in taxes that would get paid to the city. It ends up equating to more like $800 to $900 per unit for the affordable component. So that's why we need to boost the percentages up to cover that.
Copy.
You were the developer for Kettle Point.
Correct.
How many of what percentage of affordable housing is currently at Kettle Point?
I don't believe there's any because that project preceded this. And I think we bought out not myself, but the apartment component bought out through a formula that the city has about $1 million worth of affordable housing that got put into a fund to subsidize affordable housing elsewhere in the city, but it doesn't have any affordable housing on site.
So how do we know? And I know this is out of our hands once it's already in the waterfront commission's, hands, but how do we know that the same will not happen?
Well, that's specifically because we have a user here that wants to do it, and they're an affordable housing developer. That's the purpose of us coming here today, to make sure that we can ensure that happens.
So how do we as a city ensure that the 10% of affordable housing will be actually followed through?
Part of the regs of the.
Yeah.
It's part of the regs.
The Waterfront Commission now, that was the Kettle Point.
Yeah.
You had an option. You could either,
Yeah, we
Build- go ahead.
changed the rules.
You changed the rules.
After Kettle Point, where the developer has to stay up front, whether or not they're going to do the in lieu of, or they're going to do the project on site. So in this case, Mr. Bakari pledged to not to do the in lieu of, which he has the right to under state law. So it's not just a waterfront issue. But he agreed to do it up front in his development plan as an application. And our rules are, if you include that in your development plan and it's approved by the Waterfront Commission, you can't change from that. You can't midstream say, we're not going to do that now. So
And
we
it's
made
been
that-
approved by the waterfront.
Yes, right. Yeah. So with that condition that the affordable housing has to be done, it's actually a notice of decision that's recorded in the land evidence record. So, we learned from the Kettle Point project. We realized there was some things there that we could have done better. We learned from that. So we modified our regulations to say that if a developer says in his plan that he's doing it on site and it's part of his plan, it's approved, he can't renege from that.
Thank you.
And that goes back to what I was saying some time ago about the Waterfront Commission, how they have conditions in there that supersede the cities. And one of them was a 10%.
Yeah,
is
right.
required
So we do
for
have that.
affordable housing.
And, the city doesn't have a similar.
Right.
So anybody who builds affordable housing in the city, it's really just, their goodwill or good intention. It's nothing that the city can compel them to do.
Exactly.
And
Thank-
Mike, I'm sorry, were you done?
No, go ahead.
Oh, just to clarify, so given what was just presented to us about the regulation and the agreement coming forward, essentially that would have sort of the full force of a contractual agreement, right?
Yeah, it's like
if it were to be disputed.
it's like a final plan approval of the planning department. It becomes a condition of the development that they have to meet.
Yeah.
And it's recorded, in land evidence, and it's
Exactly,
recorded on the
land
plan.
evidence record, Yeah. And again, by doing these financing amendments, we just make it that much more of a reality. Affordable housing is difficult for a variety of reasons, but having an invested partner a developer that does affordable housing, one neighborhood builders. I think it just makes it more of a reality. It's actually going to happen.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but excuse me, once the money is given, you're required to deed restrict that property for 30, is it 30 years or for forever, I think, right? Forever, 30 years. So at least for 30 years. Josh is saying yes in the back. Yeah, thanks.
So I just had a question, and it's probably better for Ms. Gallagher, regarding the affordable housing. So I was fortunate in my early career as a nurse to work at Lynn Healthcare. It was one of my first jobs, and I really loved that facility. Now, this building for affordable housing, are you looking to build it similar to other assisted livings, or is it more of the modern day of a neighborhood living space versus an older themed
Right.
elderly or aging adults home?
This one's going to be independent living.
Mhm.
So independent living is different from assisted living. Like if you, the continuum of care goes like you're in your home, then you need you could go to independent living to live on your own. Assisted living is when you need help with activities of daily living, like medication assistance or bathing and cooking and that kind of thing. And then you go into skilled nursing and like long-term care. So it's a continuum of care that Aldersbridge has. So this one is going to be modeled like Winslow Gardens, which is one of the independent living facility. We have one independent living. All the rest are either assisted living, and then Lynn is the skilled nursing. And the way that the architect has designed these, they are going to be apartments. So you're living, in your own space. So it's not shared living, in that regard. And it's also like there will be some community rooms and, I wish I brought, the visuals, but we can get these visuals to you so you can actually see them. But they're like beautiful, like beautifully designed, and it's set to be more about community based. Like if you don't have to go into the community area if you don't want to, but it's more about, it's not communal living, but it's designed to have more interaction and thriving of older people. They like socializing, they like the community room and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's not assisted. It's going to be independent living.
But these are scattered rooms. These are scattered units,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, that are commingled with market rate, or this
Oh,
is
no.
entirely
It's a whole
separate.
building, like, it's gonna be
It's a
one whole
separate
building.
And all the 10% is in that one building?
Yes, it's all in one building. So if you drive down Bourne Avenue, and you know how New England Construction's right there?
Mhm.
And there's those houses before?
Yeah.
There will be two buildings.
okay.
You can see it
Oh,
like in
before
your
you
design.
actually get in.
And it will be in the second one, like across from New England Construction. That will be the one. And all of them will be in there. And we're not going to turn it into anything luxury, once we get in. So it's all about affordable housing. That's not what the developer's involved in. And Aldersbridge is all about affordable housing. So it's not like we would get in and then all of a sudden change it into something that we weren't supposed to be doing.
Can I ask you, what's going to happen to your old building? Now you're leaving that?
Yeah, the old building is just going to go on.
Yeah.
Yep. We would hope that we could get grants to eventually do more like what we did at Lynn Health, where we got a grant to renovate the spaces so that it's more about private rooms than it
Oh,
is.
it's going to go on. You mean it's going to be operating?
Oh, yeah, it's going to be
So it's
operating.
not
Yeah.
being vacated, which was
Oh, no.
my point.
No,
Because
that is
oftentimes
correct.
people
Yeah.
see and we hear complaints about, vacant buildings. Well, this is what happens. Companies build new and modern and better and leave. But in this case, you're not vacating. It's still going to be viable.
That is true. That's a
And
great
there.
point. Right.
So-
Okay.
Yeah,
So
everything's staying the same,
Good.
where it is. Yep.
Thank
So would this be marketed like any other apartment or living space? It's not, first come to those already in other independent livings within the nonprofit. It's kind of wide open to anybody.
Right. It's wide open to anyone, but it will be marketed in a way that is inclusive to the LGBTQ community.
Sure.
But it's with the allies. So it's LGBTQIA, and the A stands for allies.
Mhm.
But it's meaning that people who go there and want to live there have to understand that there will be people of that community to be living there. So they have to be open to it.
Yeah. Is there a
So the-
percentage that you're looking?
We're not,
mock?
nope.
Okay.
It's like, it is what it is, Yep.
Okay. All right.
And I believe the question's been answered already. So the rents, it's going to be rented, obviously, right?
Correct, yes.
1,400 per unit,
Mhm.
1 bedroom. Roughly.
Roughly, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if there will be 2 bedrooms now that you're saying that, but there could be, you know, I don't know. Do you know? If there's yeah, there will be some 2 bedrooms. Yes.
Would that be market rate or is that?
No, that's
gonna
all
change?
affordable, all affordable. Yeah. And then again, it's based on that. If you think about it, I think about it like a sliding scale based on your income and, you know, what you have to bring to the qualification of that.
All private pay? Or is
It
there?
will be, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Any other further questions?
No.
If not,
Thank you.
Councilman, would you like to phrase that into a motion?
Yeah, I will, actually, let's get the language correct.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna ask Councilman Rodrick's, I'm gonna recuse myself from this vote. And I'll step down for this vote because there's a conflict of
Okay.
interest. So
Okay,
You could-
I believe you can,
You filled the form. Sorry. Potential conflict, so.
So, Mr. President, I move to approve. Good call. Mr. Vice President, I move to approve the amended and restated ordinance adopting an amended East Providence waterfront special development district tax increment financing plan and authorizing the issuance of bonds to finance certain public infrastructure and public improvements necessary in connection with the East Point site project.
motion is made by Councilman Cahoon as stated. Is there a second? A second by Councilwoman Souza. Is there any further discussion at the council level? Deputy Clerk, could you please read the roll?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
The vote passes 4-0 with one abstention and reclusion from Councilman Brito. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I left myself a note. Thank you.
thank you, Councilman. Had I known that we were gonna get this much of an in-depth conversation regarding.
And this was only first passage. It was going to be an advertisement.
Yes.
So it's the public hearing. So, yeah.
I have the advertisement to run on Thursday for 3 weeks to be ready for the July 19th meeting.
I know we were going to talk so much about the affordable housing aspect of it. I would have recused myself a little earlier, but I'll recuse myself for the next one as well. And May I have a copy
Okay.
of that paper? Okay, with that being said,
Council President, I move adjournment.
okay, we have a motion for adjournment. Anyone like to
Second.
We have several seconds. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Cahoon.
Yes, please.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you.
Councilwoman Souza.
Councilwoman Souza.
Again, just keep in mind, summer schedule, next meeting will be July 19th.
Yes.